But thank you all for being here. A little bit about ChartOp. ChartOp is a dynamic people operations platform. We really turn HR data into operational intelligence. We do that by bringing all your data into business and people data into a people data lake and business data lake for just to understand that data and create deeper alignment. And from there, we surface insights through data visualizations, workflows, and through our AI capabilities. So very excited for our two guests today, which are ChartHop customers, to talk about their incorporation of AI into their workflows and business. And today we have Cerys Cook, Chief People and Transformational Officer at Swift Medical. And we have Will Chung, who is the Director of Compensation and Ops at GumGum. So today the format's going to go like this. I'm going to start a conversation with Cerys and talk about how she's been incorporating conversational AI at Swift Medical. And then I'll switch over to Will to talk to him about AI at GumGum. And then we'll bring them both together to have a combined conversation at the end. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I will stop the slide deck. So that's all the slides we had for today. And I'll start the conversation with Cerys. Cerys, welcome to the webinar today and to the conversation. Love to learn a little bit more. For anyone that doesn't know, could you explain Swift Medical and kind of give a little overview of your role there?
Yeah, so thank you for having me. Really excited to be here. So Swift Medical, we're a medical technology company specializing in the wound care space, and we do use AI in our platform to help clinicians work with customers with their the patients to speed up healing of wounds. I lead the people team, culture, organizational transformation, including AI adoption across the company.
Okay, great. And then how did you get into HR originally? What was your journey to essentially be part of the HR world?
Quite an unconventional journey, I would say. So I started out actually in a completely different world. I was a chef.
Oh, wow.
And it does connect, I promise. And it was tough, like a really, really tough environment. Long hours, payroll was often delayed. There was a lot of yelling, massive egos, kind of this knives and fire, and it was really volatile. And with like any second, a fight could and would break out, and unfortunately, a lot of sexism. I would be told things like, go sweep the floor, that's all you're good for, or women belong at home, barefoot and pregnant, in the kitchen, but not in the professional kitchen. And I mean, that's what I can share, that's a lot worse than that.
Hmm.
So it was an awful environment. And we're talking like 30 years ago. So this is not how I expected it today. And not at all what I had dreamt of my entire life, because becoming a chef was my lifelong dream. But I used to go home every night and cry. Um, was not okay to show any vulnerability. It was already bad enough that I was a woman. I couldn't show any what was considered then weakness. So I held all of that pain in during the day and then would let it out at night and just cry out of frustration, because I just thought like there has to be something better than this. And, somewhere where people are treated with dignity, where leadership actually means something different. So didn't know anything about HR at the time. I just really knew that workplaces shouldn't and didn't have to feel like that,
Yeah.
and didn't want work to be like that for anybody else. Um, so eventually left that world, got into a job as an office manager. In that company, there wasn't an HR function, but I just naturally started doing the people stuff. I think a lot of people sort of evolved into the HR role from those like administrative or office manager roles back then. So I was coaching, solving problems, hiring people who aligned with our culture, all of the things that we do, policy setting. And over time, the company really saw that, convinced them to send me to school for HR, and it really just clicked for me. And I felt like HR found me as much as I found it. And it really was the first time at work where I was just like, oh, this is where I'm meant to be. Like,
That's
this is
amazing. Yeah.
why.
Wow, what an inspired journey. I mean, it's amazing that you had such a terrible experience to then use that as an inspiration to be where you're at today and to make such an impact on the workplace, especially at Swift Medical. I'm sure everyone there loved having you there. As you've kind of matured in your HR role and you've seen all sorts of different innovations and software and tools kind of enter into the industry, into your workflows, conversational AI and AI in general obviously was a big introduction in the last couple of years. Um, what does your journey look like, essentially adapting to incorporating AI and AI literacy into your own workflow, but also into Swift Medical?
Yeah, so I mean, first I would say that I'm far from literate. I am definitely learning, and I think that we all probably are, unless you're a deep data scientist and have been doing this for so many years. Um, so we have a long way to go, but journeys are fun, right?
Hmm.
So like this is a really exciting time. I mean, if we think even back to a year ago, we weren't talking about things like AI hallucinations, and now that's like common knowledge. And we weren't really questioning the legitimacy of the information. And much of it was just like confirmation bias. A whole lot of what we were putting into it was exactly, that's right. Such a great
Right, right.
opinion. You're so wonderful. Um, so everything that we had to say was encouraged and praised, but we've learned that, AI is imperfect. And so we've started to question. I'm a change maker by nature. It's just who I am, always new and early adopter to tech. So I think it was like the week that ChatGPT came out, I was in there playing with it. And it felt like magic. Like, remember that moment of asking your first question and you saw that information coming back at you so quickly? It was such an incredible feeling. So I try to hold on to that too, because it's just like this moment of wonder. But I think at first, like, using it the way that most people did. So essentially like Google. So asking a question, getting the
Mhm.
answer, believing the answer. But then it started to creep into everything I was doing. So prompts and emails and drafts and full communications and like even helping me figure out parts of my job that I had never done before. But I think eventually I kind of went too far.
What do you mean
And
by
like
that?
one day I kind of found myself sitting in front of a blank screen, just going, I don't even know where to start without using
Hmm.
AI. And I have a degree in English literature. So that realization was actually honestly terrifying. Um, so I really never want to outsource my thinking or my voice. And the more I sit with that, the more I think that the ability to think for yourself and create something original, that's going to become a rare and valuable skill in the future, but not the conversation today. Um, so I pulled back and sort of reset that approach. And now I always write first, blank sheet of paper, then I let AI critique. So say for employee communications, I'll still draft everything myself. And then actually lately I've been using Ask ChartHop a lot more than ChatGPT or Copilot,
Hmm.
which are the main internal tools that we use alongside, we've built our own internal tool as well. But sometimes I'll actually run my questions through multiple models just to compare the perspectives. Feels weird
Yeah,
saying
that's
that about a
smart.
machine, but like it's actually fascinating how differently they like quote unquote think. So you can get, have different perspectives. It's almost like having multiple colleagues. Um, but I genuinely love Ask Chart Hop, and now I sound like I'm from your marketing team. I'm not being paid to say this.
Well,
Um,
somebody that works on the product, that feels good to hear you say that. But yeah, what about it kind of strikes you or kind of delights you as you use it?
Yeah, well, I think what I love the most, or the first thing that made me comfortable using it, is that it's a contained environment.
Hmm.
So it's our data, like specifically our people, the context of our company, and like the boundaries that we have there. So there's no risk of our company information really leaking out into the internet. And by the way, anybody who doesn't have AI tools that are contained, 100% guarantee your information is everywhere, so pay attention to that. Write strong AI
Yeah.
policies, make sure they're in place and followed. But um, when I use it, I'll ask things like, given what you know about Swift, like the language that people are using in their check-ins or the challenges that they have surfaced or our core values, what might not land here? What's unclear? What am I missing? So like I keep kind of referring to conversational AI like a teammate almost. There to like pressure test, I guess, not to do my thinking, but also like really relentless now about sources. Any stat that's thrown out at me, I'm like, great, cite this for me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Sometimes it can, sometimes it can't, but yeah, just the healthy skepticism. And then also like prompting it to challenge me. So like don't tell me I'm right, challenge my assumptions. So that kind of combination of write it first myself, so it's my own ideas, using a secure environment like Ask Chart Hop. So understanding the like context of our organization, demand citations for anything that comes out, and then invite that dissent.
Can you talk about that a little bit? When you say challenge your assumptions or invite that dissent, like what does that look like for you when you're using a conversational AI to do that? Like what are you asking it to do to challenge you?
Yeah, so it's really questions like, what what am I not seeing? Like in like, I mean, I've been using the employee communications
Mhm.
example. Like, is there anything that I am not seeing here?
Yeah.
Is there anything I'm missing? Does this come across, like, how is this going to land with the different populations in our company? Is there any bias in here that I'm not noticing? Anything like that. So always asking those questions so that I can get the feedback, and putting that through different models, I get different feedback. So then I can just use my own intelligence and piece all that together into what makes sense for the organization.
Well, that's great. That's great. Well, thank you, Karis. We'll come back and ask some more questions in a bit, but I want to turn the time now over to Will Chung, who is runs comp and HR at GumGum, and would love for you to kind of introduce GumGum to everyone, your role there.
Yeah. Although you did just promote me there. I
Oh,
was
I did. I
hired
did promote.
initially to
Well,
run
that's
comp. We do have other leaders in HR that run HR, but
sorry.
yes, I am on the leadership team. Anyway, nice to see
Okay.
everyone. So I work at GumGum. We're an advertising technology company. And one of the things I really loved about sort of when AI first jumped on the scene is we embraced it. And so it was sort of like everyone should figure out how to incorporate it into their workflows. We pretty quickly were able to get enterprise licenses for folks so that we can engage with it and make sure our data was protected. So that was really, really cool. And I still think it's a compelling reason, or it's a compelling value for employees at GumGum. I can't remember what the other part of your question was, but that's me.
No, that's good. I think you corrected the title, which sorry about that. I didn't have my slide in front of me.
Oh, no
So,
worries.
real quick, how did you get into HR? Did you always start in HR, or what was your journey there?
Yeah, so this is probably pretty common, I actually think. So I was doing like a pretty junior level sales job just super early in my career. A recruiter reached out to me about a job in TA. I never thought about HR as even a career track. So I had some
Mhm.
conversations and it actually just sounded really cool. And it sounded something in line with my interests. And so I took a job as a recruiter. And so I was in recruiting I recruited for almost 3 years, just like full cycle in-house recruiting. And then I led a team for about 3 years, a recruiting team. And then just did other sorts of HR projects. But back in 2012, I started taking on compensation. And then from there, I've just continued to take on more and more compensation. Loved it. Apparently, I was pretty good at it. So then I just kept taking on more and then ultimately leading the function. And now I'm in the third job leading the comp function for a company. Different side, different company stages, etc. But that's been my track.
Okay, great. And you said you love compensation. What about it do you love, or what does success look like when it's going well?
Yeah, I think two things. So I think like deep and broad. So comp, what I love is it's so deep. there's executive comp, there's equity, there's cash comp, there's short-term incentives, long-term incentives. There's just evolving practices. And so I think you can just build a really long, deep career in comp and sort of never feel like you've mastered everything. There's always something new to get deeper on. So I really love that. And then I love the breadth of the impact too. So you can go really deep in the career track and topic, but it just has such a huge, broad impact across any company because it interacts with everyone, right? It's so personal. It's such a large expense item for companies. So I just think it's really cool in that, I just see a long-term track in this space.
Yeah, and you're dealing with such important and sensitive data, and like you said, it's typically the largest expense that any company has, especially software.
Yeah.
And so when you think about your journey with conversational AI and how you started maybe getting introduced to it a couple years ago and incorporating it, like what does that journey look like, especially in your role with compensation? How have you interacted with it? What is it? How have you started to incorporate it into your workflows?
Yeah, I think Kara's mentioned this too, but what you're also saying about this concept of a journey, I think we're all on this journey, right?
Yeah,
And it's not,
yeah.
not even that long of a journey we've been on. So
You're at the
my
beginning.
first
Yeah.
my first just experimenting, I think we a lot of folks did this, which is I was using it like my own travel agent, not the company one. I think I signed
Right.
up for like a free ChatGPT account. I was going on a trip to Tulum and I just said like, hey, can you create me a vacation schedule for 3 days for someone who likes the beach and authentic Mexican food or whatever, right? And then it just spit out all this stuff. So I was like, wow, that's really cool. And then from there, I also remember seeing this product demo Sam Altman led around like custom GPTs that just like blew my mind.
Mhm.
Many folks on this call probably saw that because it started getting towards this sort of like promise of agentic AI and having this AI that like has a memory and has like and can learn and sort of operate in its own sort of way, which I think is which is super cool. And then sort of my journey from there is in experimenting with different models. So Gemini, ChatGPT, was trying out like Perplexity. Internally, we also are using Gemini as well, just as a company. And then I started using it more at the workplace around learning new topics. And so as I was trying to take on a project in a space that I maybe had not touched a lot, I was just asking it tons of questions. And what I loved about it is you can really engage with the topic because you can ask it questions, you could test its thinking, you can ask it to be skeptical of your thinking, you can, and like a prompt I really love is explain it to me like a third grader, or sixth grader,
Right,
a
right.
PhD, use metaphors, like that sort of thing. A couple other lessons along the way, just refining how I prompt. I also like this idea of like execution guarantees. So in a prompt, you can say, don't consider this prompt done or whatever unless this specific type of output is met. And so then it can check whether the thinking should be done or not. I think that's interesting. And then, of course, um, learning how it can fail is kind of part of the journey too, right? Which is like erroneous logic, hallucinations, inconsistent outcomes. That's one that I'm um, trying to figure out how to solve for, just because you think you got a prompt right, you think you've built a custom
Mhm.
gem or GPT right, and then you got it right when you're testing it, but then you're showing a colleague like, look how cool this thing is, and then the output is totally different when you try it in front of people versus when you're doing it on your own. So how do
Yeah.
we close that gap? Um, and then I think in terms of continuing to learn, I just pay a lot of attention to new product releases. There's a lot of technology podcasts and that sort of thing. So you're just trying to ingest like what's happening in the product space there. So that's how I approach the topic.
That's great. I think, in a conversation earlier, talking about hiring somebody new at your company in an analyst role and kind of how the interaction and the incorporation of conversational AI played a role in that whole process. Can you kind of walk us through that?
Yeah, it was I was thinking about a cool example to share with this group, and that jumped out to me because so I've hired analysts previously just as part of my role, and anytime I am hiring an analyst, I always like to have like a mini technical screen just because the work requires some skills in that area. And before AI, it was pretty simple to sort of time box it and then have a set of like queries and like a sample data set and then have someone return something back to you and be confident like they probably most likely did this themselves and then you can speak with them about it. But in a world of AI, I was really nervous that like what's to prevent someone just loading this into an AI tool, having it spell it exactly, be 100% right, send it back to me or whatever, right? So what was interesting, I then actually used AI to assess how I wanted to assess an analyst candidate from a technical
Mm.
standpoint. And then it gave me lots of tips around like how do you AI proof the assessment. And so I was sort of having AI, uh, AI proof it, like sort of the process, which I just thought was interesting.
Oh,
And what it told me, which I thought was interesting, is create questions and prompts that don't always have a right answer. So meaning that it forces the person who's doing the work to sort of make judgment calls and then have like a set of conversations afterwards to ask them about how they thought through the decision, what they were weighing, what could have potential other right answers be, so that you really engage with like how someone's thinking about something and not just like 1+1=2, because AI is so easy, it can spit that out super quickly. So
yeah.
that was really interesting. And then we've now hired the analysts, and they're great. And then we're using AI, the ChartHop AI tool, actually to help train the analysts in our data set and in the ChartHop systems. And what I love about ChartHop AI is that it is, to Cerys was mentioning, it's like sort of a closed environment, right? It's protected, it's safe, it's our people data. And it's sort of almost agentic in that it will help you. You can give it a prompt and it will show you on screen like what it's doing, which I think it's not
Right.
it's not
Right.
changing any data, but it'll actually show you like where to click in different toggles. It's like very, very cool. So in my mind, I was thinking sort of end to end, it helps me assess talent, and then now it's helping me ramp up talent. And it saves me a lot of time because then I don't need to sit with the person to just go through some of the technical stuff around our data and the tool. And then I can spend more time relationship building, talking about our strategy, that sort of thing. So yeah, I found it really cool.
That's incredible. Thanks for that example. And I think what I'd love to know is when you think about HR professionals, like if you could give any advice today to, somebody out in the HR profession, whether it's in comp in your specific area or just broadly, is there anything that you would basically recommend for them if they're trying to incorporate AI, struggling or trying to figure out how to essentially use it in a more effective way?
Yeah, I think of two things. One is, and I think as HR professionals, we all experience this where there's 30 minutes left in the day and you've got a to-do list of 10 things and you're thinking, okay, what what are most important? What do I need to triage? Like in those moments, I think lean on AI. Like what are things in that AI can immediately help you turn around more quickly? So instead of maybe originally getting to two, you can get to five things, right? So
Right.
like it's like the actual need and figuring out how to maximize time using AI. And then I also think sort of on the more strategic side, just to make sure you spend some time and mental space doing a little deep thinking and brainstorming, like what would be some interesting applications of the tool. Because I think if you're caught up too much in the day to day, you lose sight of like the usefulness of the tool, a year from now or 2 years from now. So I think just having that duality, I think is really important.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much for those great insights and stories. I'd love to bring Karis back in and kind of have a conversation with the three of us. I'll hand it over to Karis. What's a question you have for me at ChartUp, leading, a lot of AI initiatives here in our product line? What would you like to know from ChartUp?
Yeah, I would love to understand, sort of as AI becomes more embedded in product workflows, how do you see the relationship between human judgment and that machine output, sort of evolving in product design and decision making?
Yeah, that's a great question. Think about that a lot in product design. I think what AI has done is it's done a couple things that have had huge impact on where we're going with the product. One is that Startup is always kind of oriented around trying to be the most customizable, configurable HR platform out there around your data. And because it's your data and your organization, how you want to set it up, we want to make sure that you can apply those preferences and configuration to your chart app environment to just better reflect your organization. But that takes a lot of configuration options that are potentially around different parts of the interface, and that can be a little challenging or overwhelming. And AI has kind of taken the edge off of that complexity and allowed our users to kind of explain or request certain kind of updates or changes or configuration through just plain language. And then for that to translate into something like what we call our query language, so that it's much easier to just kind of write what you're trying to configure, what you want, and for ChartUp to interpret that. So that's helped quite a bit. The other is that I've been fascinated with, we have users now where the AI interface in ChartUp has been their primary and first interface to our platform. So it's no longer people that have learned the UI and learned where to find things and navigate, and AI is this nice companion on the side. We even have an update recently where AI is put front and center when you first log in, and it's the first thing you see is to be able to ask a question. And so to have users now that that's their primary interface to the platform, it really puts a bright light on us looking at the responses it gives backing, making sure that it aligns with what the data is saying, and eliminating those hallucinations, and in looking at repeatability. So things like if a question is asked and answered in a correct way, how do we ensure that that happens every time after that and consistently? So it's just been fascinating to see new users now where AI is their primary interface, and the UI is almost like a backup, you know. Turn it over to Will. Any questions you have around AI and product and ChartUp?
Yeah, you're kind of setting me up for the question, actually. And I spoke about this earlier around one of the lessons I learned, how AI can be inconsistent. So from a product view, how are you trying to solve for inconsistent outcomes? And I don't even know if that's the right question to ask, because
Yeah,
I wonder if some of the brilliance of AI is that it can produce inconsistent outcomes like humans, right? Because then you get brilliance and that sort of variance. But sometimes when you just want a tool to do a thing, you want it to output the same thing every single time, or like this, you know what I mean? So I
right.
struggle with that. So I'm curious, how are y'all solving that from a product standpoint?
Yeah, it's we've implemented our conversational AI in a fairly unique way, and that is to try to address the very issue you're talking about, which is I think in a lot of conversational AI interfaces, the results you get back are in that conversational AI interface. I mean, you ask a question and then it responds back as if you're almost in a text chat, you know.
Right.
And that does happen in ChartUp. So when you ask ChartUp a question, it will respond back there. But it also redirects the UI itself to create the results you're looking for. So if you're asking to create a chart or you're asking to create a table of employee data, it can give an analysis that is fairly unique and it might change from time to time in the chat side of things. But the result it actually is giving you is it can't manipulate the UI in a way where that's going to be substantially different each time it tries to answer that question. So you're getting kind of the natural language response in
Right.
the chat window, but then you're getting the UI response in the main screen. And that is, that has very little variance, if any, in terms of the results that you get in that side of ChartUp. So it's this balance of allowing for like you said, the innovation and the less repeatability in the chat side of things, but then the
Yeah.
consistency in the UI response.
Wow, that's cool. That's a great way to think about it.
So we'll keep trying to bring that forward and
Yeah.
add more functionality like that as we move forward. But it's been an exciting way to kind of try to solve that. How about Cerys, what question do you have for Will that you've heard Will talk about his journey with AI and how he incorporates it? What's a good question that you have for Will?
Um, yeah, so I kind of see us coming at this from two sides of the same coin. So like you're deep in the data and the analytics, and I'm sort of looking at the transformation and culture side. And we think a lot about how AI can augment work rather than replace it,
Yep.
because that's a very scary conversation. Is AI going to take my job? But from your lens, how do you see data and AI helping us to make better, sort of more human aligned decisions, especially around sort of compensation, without losing that nuance that only people can bring?
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. We need the marriage of both things. And I just think about it as AI, it serves up the data that you have that's important, and it may surface the data you don't have that may be important for the human to then engage with that, to then make some human-based judgment calls. And so, and that first part of the equation, like in Complan, for example, it takes some time to pull the data to understand what you have, what you don't have, you know what I mean? And so I think if AI can shorten that window, it actually creates more time for the person to assess, make judgment calls, that sort of thing. So I think your question, or the spirit of it, I think is spot on, was you do need both. It's not replacing. And I mean, it's such a new space, and we're going to see how it keeps developing. But I don't love having AI just tell you like what to do around comp decisions. And so the way I've typically used it is kind of what I mentioned is like assess the data we have, assess the data we don't have, and then I'm using it to like form an informed perspective, if that makes sense. We may get to a place where we have like compensation analysts that are AI totally driven and they could just spit out a bunch of recommendations and that sort of thing. But that's not where I'm at yet. But maybe we ultimately get there, but that's just, I'm not there yet.
And Will, what's a good question you have for Cerys, especially after hearing her incorporation of AI, how she has evolved from the delight to the fear of the blank page to, like using it more as an assistant. What's a good question you have for Cerys?
Well, I was thinking about the transformation sort of piece of your title, and so the question is sort of around that. So I was thinking, my question is, are you sensing or what are you sensing as some of the key like person or organizational competencies that will help like accelerate AI adoption? So just from like an individual standpoint and from an organizational standpoint, I'd be really curious to hear your thinking around that.
Yeah, I don't know that we're there yet. So like the that part of my role, so that transformation piece, a big part of it is definitely starting to look at how AI can help us work smarter without adding sort of more people. But we haven't really gotten to the systemic level yet.
Yeah.
So at the very beginning of that journey of really understanding how individuals are using it to help inform how we can maybe streamline that across the organization, because those use cases for individual is like, how are you using this? What is it like? How are you using it to make your day easier and better? And do you have anything unique that you're doing? And then we can look at that across the whole system, but also, deeply understanding the business and all of the processes across the business is something that I've spent the last 6 months really trying to do, because in order to make change and to impact the organization in a positive way with any sort of AI, whether it's agentic or conversational, really need to understand what we're trying to do and how we can connect that to business outcomes. And it's a very tricky balance, because it's actually deeply a change management story.
Hmm.
Um, we're really asking people to rethink how they work
Yeah.
and to question their old habits, and then to trust these new systems that they hear this AI is going to replace your job. Um, so, we're like really in the infancy stage, and I've had a lot of conversations with other CPOs about this, and a lot of organizations are at that very, very beginning stage where you know, it's just
Yeah.
starting to re-examine.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I love grounding it in basic change management principles. I think that's a great way to think about it. So thank you.
When you're talking about people, employees talking about, being concerned about AI and replacing jobs, stuff like that, what are some of those conversations, or how has that been presented to you? Is that they come to you directly, or you just hear kind of commentary in the background, or how has that been surfaced to you as a concern?
Um, I would say it less of really surfaced as a concern, but more just because we built, and when I say we, I mean IT, not me, I'm not technical, built an internal tool called Swifty AI. And that's our internal AI assistant, lives inside Teams. It connects to all of our internal systems. So anyone, you can type in like, what's our travel policy, or like analyze our customer data over the past 2 years against those metrics. And it's the lack of adoption that really triggers like, why? Why are
Mhm.
people hesitant to use our internal system? I mean, we did not admittedly roll it out well. We're just like, here's a new tool, use it. And that's not how you do change management. So we've learned that and we're kind of pulling it back and figuring stuff out as we go. And of course, we knew that, but you do stuff anyway when you're moving so fast. But that's where I see it's a little bit of that resistance. Like everybody's using ChatGPT because it's external and my manager can't see how I'm using it. So maybe like I don't feel threatened
Mhm.
because they don't know what I don't know. Whereas an internal tool might feel like, oh, what can they see? Can they see the questions I'm asking it? Can they see what I'm trying to get, the output I'm trying to get? Can they see that I don't know this thing? So, we've done a lot of work around nobody knows everything about everything. Like, that's okay, and we understand, and this is what we can see, and this is what we can't see, to give people that comfort. But that's where I've really that people have not been coming to me saying, "Is AI going to take my job?" Is more
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
not using the tools that we build for them.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Good observation. Yeah, that's great. Um, Before we continue the conversation, I do want to throw out that we do have a poll right now that we'd love anyone that's attending the webinar here to participate in. And that is to ask you if you want any more information about ChartOp and our AI capabilities. Both Karis and Will talked about how they use that and incorporate that into their workflows. We just want to make sure you have an opportunity to follow up there if you have any interest in ChartUp and what ChartUp AI and Ask ChartUp can do for you and your organization. So please feel free to fill out that poll. And then I'd love to now turn over to a couple questions that we had from the audience. One is, Will, it says, Will, you touched on a couple custom GPTs and gems. Can you give a few examples or ideas for those?
Yeah, the one I'm trying to get to produce a consistent outcome is I like titled an expert data auditor, right? It's the whole concept of garbage in, garbage out. If your data is not
Right,
clean
right.
at the outset, it's hard to interpret anything like at the end of your analysis. And so the tool I was using is Gemini, so it's a custom gem. And so for those that haven't used that, like you can upload documents, like reference documents. It's all in an enterprise license, so it's all private and it's not used to train the model, but you can upload whatever you want. And then you can give it consistent instructions that it memorizes. And then it becomes sort of ready to receive various prompts that you're posing and then produce certain outputs. And so that in that gem, I have like execution guarantees written into the gem to say, don't consider this query done until XYZ is met. And one of the conditions could be until you produce a downloadable Excel file with 3 tabs that include X, Y, and Z on each tab. Like, so you're trying to box in the outcome that can happen. And it definitely can work. I'm not yet at a place where it's producing consistent results, but it's very cool because it's stuff that normally would just take a lot of time to triage, where you have missing gaps in data or like inconsistent parent-child fields and that sort of thing. So that's an immediate example. I do think the like in the space I'm in, the future example is probably something like an AI, HR analyst, comp analyst, sort of that supports the human. I'm not using it in that way, but I could see that kind of be where the industry goes.
Yeah, that's great. I love that idea of building in the requirement for a certain kind of output before it feels like it's done. Because I feel like that's one of the challenges with AI in general, conversation AI is the confidence level in the tone is always so high.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. It's
here you
always like
go,
I'm
and you're like,
done,
yeah, that's
and
not what I'm
then
looking
and then
for.
you look and you're like, this is like, what are you talking about? This is not done. Like,
Yeah,
you've not
yeah,
produced the thing we need you to produce. And
yeah.
sometimes it
It
will say
feels
I'm done, and then I will remind it, like, please reference your execution guarantees and assess if this met that, criteria. And then it would say, oh, you're right. It did
yeah.
not. And then it would run through again, right? Like yeah. So that's an example.
Yeah, that's great. Um, the other question we had was for Karis. It was about AI adoption. I think you answered a lot of that in your company. So I wanted to throw it out and say, or throw out a different question and just ask both of you, from somebody that's leading AI incorporation into product, what's a wish that you have for like now that you've used AI in different contexts and for different workflows, what's one thing that you're like, oh, I wish somebody would just build this or this type of AI functionality. This is something that I wish I had available. So like putting your product hat on, what do you wish that you had access to that maybe you're looking for today?
That's such a great question. For me, it was sort of what instantly came to mind was something on the legal side. And I don't know why that was my first thought,
Yeah.
but I think that's maybe where the skills on my people team are, like we have the basic knowledge, but and I don't know how that connects to chart hop, but
Well, it
we
doesn't have to be chart up. Yeah, just in general, like where, yeah.
but just like really deep knowledge of employment laws across different geographies and
Mm.
correct information on that. Because I mean, legal fees are very expensive. We are a startup. We would like to be able to do some of that upfront work and to be able to trust it. So that to me, it probably exists, but that would be the first thing that I would think of.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. And Will?
Um, what's interesting is I think the thing that would be very cool is an instance that truly learns over time and learns your particular use cases. And I know that actually is part of the promise of a lot of the models, that it will get better over time, not just at a model level, but like the ones you're actually using. But I
Yeah.
haven't seen a lot of that firsthand. Maybe it's just we haven't been in this journey long enough yet. But like I was just visualizing, it could be cool where you do have, like, you're hired at a company, everyone gets assigned an AI assistant.
Like a buddy AI
Yeah, a
buddy.
buddy, and that gets smarter with you over
Yeah.
time in your whole career there. You could even think about it, it could potentially even transcend companies, right? Like, um,
Mm.
that's would be really interesting, because then you're starting to actually, um, that's the, this is the tricky part. Like, you don't want to replace humans, but then that sort of memory and learning over time, it's like kind of the general intelligence thing that everyone's trying to build towards, right? Like, that's would be incredible, but also scary. So
Yeah.
that's sort
Yeah.
of the duality of it.
Yeah.
But
No,
that
it's
would be
true.
very cool.
Yeah, I love that concept of just like helping you as a memory. I think that's something that I think about a lot is organizational memory, but also individual memory. And
Yeah.
you just think about how much can either be retained or lost through as an organization changes over time and different people fill in different roles. And like how do you retain that information over time and kind of build on that intelligence? Well, thank you so much both for joining the conversation today. I learned a lot from each of you, both in terms of like rollout and adoption and how to better set ourselves up to make sure that organizationally we're kind of embracing a lot of these changes. And then also just how to ensure I get better results out of these different tools. So thank you so much. It was a really great conversation. Uh, Anything you'd like to say before we end the conversation today? Anything you'd like to say about your company or about your role or anything to kind of end on here?
If we have time, I have one really thought-provoking question that I just think blew my own mind. I just
Yeah.
thought it was really interesting. I want to pose to this audience. So I was thinking about, in a world where like we truly have agentic AI embedded in how we work, like what might even an org chart look like that captures that organizational capacity? Because right now we're just used to thinking about boxes representing people, right? And roles. But, you know, 50 years from now, that one box could represent a million agentic AI support. So then how do you think about span of control, organizational capacity, resource planning? Like, it's just that little question in my mind has just got me thinking, like, it's just such an interesting thing around how does HR navigate that space. So I thought that was really interesting, and I'll throw that out in
Yeah.
the group.
Almost like an org chart of domain expertise or functional responsibility in that way.
Yeah.
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 Interesting.
Yeah. And just kind of building on that, I've sort of been thinking of the future of the, HR leader, sort of engineering those conditions for human potential and machine intelligence to coexist. So
Mm.
like, and ethically and sustainably, but like this human systems design in a really profound way. um, and not just adapting, but like architecting this new relationship between human and systems, and that like the creation, the value that that together we create. So a lot to think
Yeah.
about.
gets
That's great. Thank
philosophical.
you so much, Cerys. Yeah, great comment to end on. Thank you for joining us, Cerys, today, and your incredible work at Swift Medical, and Will, with your promoted role at GumGum. Congratulations. Thank you so much for that great conversation. Learned a lot. I'm sure all of our participants did too, and very insightful. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.